There is something profoundly wrong in our country.
They're eating the dogs.
For extra long shows without ads and extra content, go to patreon.com/RegilioV everything for everything. And welcome. This is going to be such a fun episode because there's no more fun than having an old friend on the show. And I've got Tuesday Thomas with me. And Tuesday, kind of groundbreaking comedian. You were probably a trans comedian before just about anybody. Was that true? And welcome, Tuesday.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much. I'm of a certain age, and I've been doing it for a while. So yeah, there are many open trans comedians now, but I can't think of any really. I mean, there was a couple at the same time that are just as old as me, but I don't think they really do it anymore. They kind of gave up because it's really difficult to be trans anywhere in this world right now, let alone in the male-dominated comedy world.
Yeah, for sure. Well, just in Trump's America in general, I would imagine, and obviously we're going to get into that. But you've broken some ground, and it's not gone unnoticed. For one, you have a special out on the same label as me, Comedy Dynamics. That's called Tuesday's Trash. Do go check that out. Hilarious. But there's also a documentary about you right now called The Trash Goes Out on Tuesday, which talks about your life, which I thought might be a good place to start. Let's talk about your life. So, Tuesday, who are you and where'd you come from?
Well, I always say, sometimes I'll start out my set by saying, hi, I'm Tuesday Thomas. I'm 64 years old, but my pussy's only 44. So, but these are only 4. So stop looking at them, you pedophiles out there.
Wow.
So yeah, I started way back. I transitioned very, very early in the kind of dark ages of, there was no T in the LGBTQIA, it was just, it was GLB. And then because of the AIDS crisis and the lesbians kind of nursing the gay men and helping them pass the mortal coil in a calmer way, they put the L's first, so it was LGB. And a lot of people don't realize that the T wasn't added till almost the year 2000. And so if you're coming out in the late 70s, early 80s as the T, and I actually went, this will kind of sum it up. I went to a LGB center or a GLB center at the time and was like, hey, this is what I am. I need to find doctors who'll help me. I don't know where to go. There's not really any books on it. Of course, there's no internet at that time. I didn't know what to do. And I was looked at and I was told flat out, you're not us. You're not one of us. You're an it. We can't help you with anything. And that kind of sums up a lot of the way it was. There was gay men who just looked at, there still is. I mean, there's the normal gays out there now that want to separate from us, but they were common back then. And I had lesbians say to me, you look like a girl, you act like a girl, but no matter how many surgeries you have, you will never be a woman, a real woman. And I would just look at them and say, well, that might be the case, but I'll be one thing you'll never be. And that's a lady. So that kind of pissed them off.
Yeah. And that was New York, if I'm not mistaken. That's where you got your start.
Yeah. Yeah. We weren't allowed to really do much. If you were very, very lucky, which I was fortunate being white and being passable. And I'll never discount the fact of my privilege for that, but it was still very difficult because somebody like me was allowed to maybe be a cosmetics girl, at Macy's or something like that. But once somebody found out or complained, or you had a jealous person say, that's a man, you're gone right away because you've lied. If you lie about that, you're also the kind of person that will steal money from the till.
Interesting.
That's
but
how
you
they
didn't
viewed
lie.
it. No, I just didn't tell them.
By modern morals, people would say you didn't lie, that a trans woman is a woman, is what a a modern liberal would say, and that when they ask, do they even ask you your sex when you apply for a job? I don't remember them ever asking me. Like,
Well, I think at sometimes they might, or I don't remember. That's a good question because I was just thinking to myself, I never lied because I never said anything about that
yeah,
situation. And
you
I
lied with your
probably, if there
presentation.
was an M or an F, I conveniently didn't mark it. But the whole thinking behind the fact that because you don't know what I was born as, and now you're looking at that as I lied to you about that, and then taking that grand jump to now I'm nothing but a thief and I will rob you blind when I've worked for 6 months to a year as a good employee. It just was a weird situation. And so that's why a lot of us were forced into different times, some all the time, for myself, at different times into sex work. And I wasn't built for that. It really, I mean, to this day, it has taken its toll on me. But I had to survive. I had to, you couldn't get insurance to pay for your hormones or surgeries or anything. Everything had to be cash on the barrel. You had to go black market to get your hormones. You had to,
No way.
find doctors who would do surgeries because, a lot of doctors wouldn't even give you a nose job if you were trans because they didn't want to deal with that. They didn't want to deal with trans people. So to get any kind of surgeries, we had to fly out of country. So the money, and of course, those doctors who did that weren't always the best doctors. They knew how desperate we were, so the prices were even higher.
Wow. So you actually had to get your hormones on the black market back in the day?
Yeah, a lot of times you did. I remember Rotten Ralphie, we called this one guy that used to come into the trans bars in New York City and, sell us expired medicines and expired Premarin, which was the big hormone then, which was now it's synthetically made, but Premarin stood for pregnant mare urine. That's what women who were going through the, menopause would have to take. It was a purple pill. And so, I don't know where he got it from, but we would have to take that. I found a gynecologist who was in a teaching hospital who would let me come every 6 months and give me a prescription if I talked to his class. And what he would do was I was like a one of those French poodles that had to jump through the burning hoops. What he would do is he would have the so-called transvestite, which is back then somebody who only dresses up as a woman for kink. That's their sexual that's how they get a
I
hard
was going to
on.
ask that, the difference
Yeah.
between
So
transvestite and trans.
yeah, so transvestite was that. There was a transsexual, which was what I was. There was the drag queen, and then there were the ones. I'm getting the terminology confused, but there was the ones that got it from kink. There were the ones that just or cross-dresser. That's what I'm thinking of. Cross-dressers are the ones
Right.
who just felt comfortable in women's clothes. They didn't turn them on. They weren't getting kink from it. They didn't want to change their gender. They just felt comfortable in women's clothes. And that was their thing. And so there was a cross-dresser, the transvestite, transsexual, and then a drag queen, which we all know what that is. So we'd have one of each of us come in, parade in front of the class, sit down, and have to answer questions to the class about what we were and everything like that. And I think I would get the worst one because the transvestite who does it for kink was so into it. The cross-dresser was
Yeah.
just common, like, I don't care what you think of me. I'm just doing this because it relaxes me. It's like, smoking a joint. I put on a skirt
Yeah.
and that's it. And then the drag queen was like, oh, I perform. Yay. And then me, I was like, you're a freak. What do you do? How do you do this? You're going to cut it off. You're going to do that, and the thing was, I would do that every 6 months just for a written prescription. He didn't pay for the pills. I still had to pay for the pills. So, everybody else is getting a $25 check, but not me. I'm getting a prescription for 6 months that I still had to pay
Wow.
for the pills.
Yeah. It's so interesting the way you phrase that. It really drives home that, let's say the drag queen's doing it for performance, the cross dressers doing it as some way of mellowing out, and it's like, it's none of the above. It's just like
It's inherent.
you are just who you are, and your
Yeah.
interests lay outside of whatever this is. It's like saying, I'm a man because it mellows me out. Like, that's not even a cogent thought.
No.
And that,
And I'm not doing
it's
this
not performative for
I'm
you.
doing this because it's inherent in me. This
Yeah.
being trans is not, it's what other people think is the most defining factor. But and the people who get to know me forget about that. They don't see that.
Yeah.
People who just meet me
Yeah.
in many situations in comedy or just every day, they don't think of the trans. They don't see that because they're like, oh, she's really funny. Oh, she's really nice. Oh, she's very intelligent about this certain area. Oh, she's always got a smile on her face. It's so far down the list of what defines you, but it's the number one thing when other people find that out about you. It's the number one thing that defines you all of a sudden. I mean, I go from, people looking at me in the eye to like all of a sudden finding I'm trans, or say, oh, I'm trans, and their eyes go right down to my crotch. It's like, oh,
Wow.
what other kind of, like, do you do that to an Irishman? Do you do that to a Baptist? I mean, it's so odd. It's so odd because
That is so
it's a quick
odd.
glance down like, oh, do I see a bulge? What do I see? What's going on? I don't know. I gotta know. Why?
Wow. It is a why, but at the same time, we're just these evolved monkeys off the plains of Africa. I don't even know if it's voluntary on their part, It's like we all are just like I want to cut them a little bit of slack, maybe if they're overt about it, but we can't even help it. We're all we're very curious creatures, which is why you've been so kind as to come on the show today and talk about these things, because people have so many questions, What do you mind if I ask you, like, what was it? How did you know? Did you always just feel like you were a woman or a female, or did you initially just think you were gay? What was that like as a young person before you were able to put your finger on what it was you wanted to do?
I was always the same as my mother and my sister until I was berated into thinking I wasn't. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Then by berate, I mean physically beaten or, emotionally, beaten, or just kept told over and over again that, you're a boy, you're a boy. I did not see it. I did not, from the early days, I always hung around the women in the house and they were cooking and stuff. I'm from a large Italian family, always hung around the women and stuff. And, my friends I was more friendly with the girls, but I thought I was the same as my younger sister, until one day, we were very young, and how you're just laying around on a hot August, sultry New York, no air conditioning evening where you're just dying of sweat, this is, and we're laying around in a tank top and our underwear, and she noticed there was a little difference down there than hers. She's like, why do you have a bulge? And I don't. And then all of a sudden I realized I was not like her. And then issues started coming in. Like, why am I not? What is this? And then I was told, you got to be more of a man. You got to be a man. You got to be a boy. And I couldn't play sports. I couldn't, do so many of the things that the boys could do. I wasn't even interested in that, but I was forced to. So then I started to be called queer and all that. And so I'm like, oh, I guess that's what I am, and then as you blossom and mature and you start being attracted to people, I was attracted to boys.
Yeah.
But then it got to the point later on, I'm like, I like having sex with boys, but I don't like having sex with a boy as a boy. And I had to like kind of figure that one out. That didn't make any sense at all. And and then it just turned into, I met somebody, because we didn't have anything back then. We didn't know. I remember the only one I knew, was Christine Jorgensen. And of course, everybody around was like, oh, that freak that went over across the country, they should be, that thing should be in a psychological ward. So I was kind of conditioned to every feeling I had was going to make me end up in a rubber room. Every thought I
Wow.
had, every want I had, and everything was kind of like, you do that, you're going to end up in a rubber room. You're going to end up in jail. That's against, I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Fight every inherent feeling I have? So I did. Until one day I met somebody who was a trans person, and I was like, ah,
That. I'm that.
yeah, yeah.
And how old were you when that happened?
I was very young. I mean, it's been so long. I mean, anywhere from 18 to 21, somewhere in there. I don't remember the exact times, but I
Somewhere in
was
there.
like, hung around, the drag queens, and I met a couple who was just fascinating to me. They look like a heterosexual couple who was born in their genders, but there was actually the woman, the female was a trans and the male was a trans. One was they I don't know how other to explain it other than they both switched. They were dating beforehand as a boy and a girl.
Wow.
They dated afterwards as a boy and a girl. But
They just switched who was the boy and who was the girl.
right, right. They both understood, but they both loved each other, and I always found that fascinating. Because also one of the things people don't realize back then, like you see Dylan Mulvaney and all these people, like, oh, 360. It's my 40th day of being a girl. I'm learning, and it just seems so easy. Oh, I went to the doctor and got a prescription. I went to do this. I got the okay for my facial feminization. Um, Back when I started, you had to go uh, to a psychiatrist. And you had to pay for that, of course. And then you had to present as a woman for 6 months in everyday life before they would okay you to get the prescription for the pills. So imagine trying to like live as a woman when you don't have any of that medication that feminizes you. You had to go see a social worker like every 3 months, psychiatrist twice a year or so. And then the psychiatrists and social workers would try to trick you because they would they didn't see any point if you were born male and wanted to become female if you were attracted to females. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, because they would say, hey, if you're attracted to females, just stay a man. And that's
You
the
can
best
get
way
one.
to get females, right?
Right, because you can
Yeah.
get one, and that's what the world's all about. It's all about, people finding somebody else, not about the inside. They didn't understand that. So they would try to trick me up all the time and say, yeah, well, the such and such movie star. I saw the movie the other day. She's so beautiful. And I'm like, she's okay. I'm not attracted,
Yeah.
but they would try to do things. They would show me pictures of women. Do you think she's beautiful? Because they wanted to not let me go forward. It
Interesting.
was a
That
battle.
is so interesting. Yeah, it's actually something that I didn't, it didn't ever occur to me until I met a trans person. I was actually on a shoot a few years ago, and it was a young gentleman and totally open about everything and was showing me their Instagram. And they were like, look, this is where I switched from girl to boy. And I looked at the pictures, and very attractive young woman, very attractive young man as well, quite frankly.
Hmm.
But he was telling me that, it's difficult because he's into boys. And I had that thought because I'm just a stupid middle-aged white guy. And I was like, if you're into boys, you, you were a beautiful woman. You could have had all the boys you wanted, but that didn't speak to the identity and to the peace of mind, or you
Hmm.
talk about like just the knowledge that I am being the person that I am and not living, I guess you'd call it a lie, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I was. I mean, I like my mom had said after, there was some tension when I first announced it and I stayed away from the family for a while, but, we've cleared all that up and everything's great. There's no misunderstandings. But she has said many times, she's like, I really should have seen it coming. I really should have seen it. Looking back, hindsight, of
Yeah.
course, is 2020. But she's like, you would walk in and, you know, I remember her saying walking in, maybe 10, 11, 12 or something, in shorts and a tank top and, been out playing. And I walk in the house and she's like, "You've got beautiful legs. You should have been a girl." She remembered saying that to me too,
Wow.
something about the shape of my arm or something was like, my brother said, "You got arms like a girl. Maybe that's why you throw like a girl." So there were those little things that
Interesting.
were sad, but it was just such a different world that nowadays they'd be like, it'd be picked up on. But back then it was just like, no, you're a boy. So this is odd that you have beautiful legs.
Yeah, well, hey, credit to you, but there's plenty of trans women that started off as rather masculine men. So aren't you lucky that you started off as a man with some beautiful lady legs?
Well, and also I think, a lot of it is about, not a lot, a good portion of it is about when you start. When you start being able to,
Yeah.
like,
Well,
when you
that's an
hit
interesting.
puberty hits people in different ways, and some it hits really hard. So that's why I don't have a problem with puberty blockers. I mean, I would have a problem with, any kind of genital surgery or top surgery or something like that before they turn 18. But puberty blockers are given to cisgendered uh, uh, children because they're going through puberty at like 6, 7, 8 years old, and they shouldn't be. So they give them puberty blockers to stop it. And then they go off and they don't have any problems in life. But all of a sudden now, oh, that's ruining their life if you give them because if you think they're trans and give them puberty blockers and let them make up their mind, that's a problem. That logic does escapes me.
Yeah, that's so interesting. That was exactly one of the things I wanted to ask you about. And I think I didn't know that about puberty blockers being given to 6 or 7 year olds that are prematurely going into puberty. But
And
yeah,
premature
so
puberty happens
here's
constantly. It's been happening for years. And it started when we started giving our food supply, the cows all the antibiotics with the hormones in it to produce more milk. So then the meat has more milk. And then everybody wanted to go to soy, and soy is high in estrogen. And so, like, people are blossoming very early. So they stopped that with that. And the kids don't have any side effects when they go off, but trans kids will.
interesting. So, but you did say that you would have a problem with somebody having genital surgery before, and you said 18. And I guess that's just because that's what we have as the age of consent in America. But these thoughts do cross my mind, particularly with just the modern milieu around transgender
Mhm.
right now, particularly in liberal bastions and whatnot, where I know before I was 18, there were plenty of things that I thought defined me and would define me forever. And then it turns out that teenagers just are figuring it out. And so it does seem to me that something life altering, where you actually alter a person's body, we as adults should probably be the ones to say, we know for fact that because we were all once teenagers, it's not a good time to make decisions like that. And it seems to me that you agree with me, even though my opinion, I'm open to having my mind changed, but this is the thought I have coming into it.
And the reason I have that opinion is because I am a realist and understand that the majority of people are like you, that are on that side. And I don't think that you can understand or comprehend if I tell you to sit there and think about what would your life had been like if everybody told you from an early age, you're a girl, you need to stop. You need to stop playing baseball. You need to stop acting that way. You need to wear dresses. You need to do this. I don't think you can
In my case, they
comprehend.
were telling me that.
I
They
don't
were
think
telling
that
me,
they
you're
were.
a girl. You know that, don't you?
Well, but you get what I'm saying. Yeah, they were doing
I
it
do
for
know what you're saying. That if somebody told you just that you can't be this thing that you are,
right. And I don't think
it would
you can.
have.
I don't think people who have not gone through being trans can understand what that's like. So yes, I wish I could have had surgery at a very early age. I do, and I wish I could have taken hormones at an earlier age. But I'm also a realist, and I know that society is not going to let that happen at this point. So I don't want people. I want people to get it as soon as they are able to. And it seems to be that arbitrarily we've decided that. 18 is the age where you can, vote and you can do this and you can do that. Or
Yep.
for some reason, 21 is the age where you can drink alcohol and smoke cigarettes. And,
Yeah.
but 18, you can go to war. I mean, that's kind of the arbitrary area that, humanity has decided, unless, of course, you live in Arkansas, where, Sarah has said that you can, work 12-hour shifts at 14 years old, but
Oh
bringing those
yeah.
child labor laws back. But at any rate, so that's why I am this way. But I
But don't
also
you think it's
know
possible
that
that a 14-year-old might not be don't you think it's look, again, open-minded to the entire thing, and you're my educator right now, and that's why I have you on and you're teaching me, but that if a 14-year-old says that they want any kind of surgery, that you should say, you're just not old enough to make that decision, and that particularly with how popular the trans movement is right now with kids, I know I have nieces who champion it, that a kid might get confused.
I think that's a possibility. I do think that
Yeah.
might be a possibility, but I do think that parents understand what their child is. I think their parents, and if we educate people enough and we take the stigma away, a parent can say, yeah, I really think that this is what it is because I know my child. And I also, in the reverse, the parents could be like, yeah, why don't we wait a little bit, honey? I mean, my parents said to me, yeah, why don't we wait a little bit and in 2 years we'll revisit that fact that you want to own a horse in a city. Okay.
Yeah.
But right now it's the arbitrary number. So I think,
Yeah.
that's good. And
That's what I
also
say.
the regret rate is everybody's like, what about the detransitioners? And what about the regret rate? There's higher regret rates for appendectomies. There's higher regret rates for other kind of surgeries. Much, much, much higher. And
Yeah.
the detransitioning and is 99% because they regret their transition because society has not let them be themselves. Society hasn't let them work, get educated. People are constantly at them. Their parents or their family are ultra religious and say, you're going to hell. It's all pressure from the outside. And I have met and known a number of detransitioners in my life, and every single one of them, that's why. It wasn't because they wanted to. It's just that they
Right.
could not handle the pressure. And that's wrong. You shouldn't
Interesting.
have that pressure to be yourself.
Definitely not. That is so interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely, if a child wants to have therapy where they work through these problems, they want to be identified as a sex that they weren't born as. They want to dress as a sex they weren't born as. They want their parents and their school to call
you
them
frown.
a name that I'm for all of it. It's just that obviously, again, middle-aged white guy, that it seems like surgery best to wait. But it's not that I'm
No.
against trans people at all. I just remember how fucking stupid I was at 16. That I wanted to get a tattoo of a skull with a flaming mohawk smoking a cigarette when I was 16. And I went to the tattoo parlor and the guy figured out I had a fake ID. And I thank that man every day that I don't
So you
have
got a Tasmanian devil instead,
terrible-
right?
Yeah, no, I ended up with no tattoos. I lucked out. Every time I thought I wanted one, I somehow didn't end up happening. And then,
But you said one thing too when you were talking about it, about a child going through therapy and doing all these things. And I think that's the important part. If a child's going through therapy and the parents are with them and trying to discover what's really going on, those years of puberty blockers where they're going through the therapy and stuff like that probably are going to and if they decide they want surgery, it's going to take them until about 16, 17 anyway.
So, but you also said that in addition that you were for the puberty blockers, but you think they should hold off on the hormones until after 18 as well.
Because that's what the puberty blocker is. That once you're off the puberty blockers,
Yeah.
if you've decided that's what's going to be, then I think, hormones of
Yeah.
the opposite's gender that you want to, what you want to be, then that should
Yeah.
be started. Puberty blockers is stopping the hormones. So you're really delaying, extending childhood, basically.
Yeah.
So, um,
What do the hormones do? Another ignorant middle-aged
sometimes
white
with
guy
people,
question.
I've known people who the hormones really haven't done much of anything. With me, it just redistributed my weight. I got hips, I have large breasts now, but they're implants, but I did have a good B cup and,
Yeah.
softened everything. I didn't have much hair on my body, but like arms and stuff just kind of went away. I was very, very,
Yeah.
again, very privileged and fortunate that they really did well for me. I had friends who would take them
Wow.
for a couple, 3 years, and there's really no difference. Um,
Interesting.
I think it blocked their testosterone, but it didn't really change anything on them.
That's interesting that you didn't have a lot of hair to begin with as an Italian person, because
Well, it's
we are
funny because,
notoriously.
yeah, it's funny because my sister and I have the light colored blonde hair, and uh, mine is really kinky. It takes a long time to like, it's very Italian, coarse and everything. Hers was very straight, uh, and she's got lots of hair on her body, even though she's blonde and I had none. So it's kind of weird mix. There's family photos. It's like, where did the two? There's some Northern Italian Swedish thing happening here. It just kicked
Oh
in
yeah,
this
that's what people tell
generation.
me all the time too. Yeah. Speaking of generations, this was a question I was thinking is that, you are a trailblazer and your trans experience was very different than a young person today's is going to be. Probably, almost certainly, yours was more brutal. I mean, it was basically illegal. You were taking expired hormones that some shady doctor brought to a bar,
And we would
in
go
New
to
York
men's
City.
jail. If we got picked up for sex work, we would go to men's jails.
Yeah, that is
We
so
were we were
interesting.
treated, yeah, we were hunted, and it's kind of what they want to get back to now.
Oh, of course. I mean, don't even get me started on this uh, Christo-fascist takeover of our government that we're experiencing. But my question was, the young trans folk today, because just because of the generation they're in, they're also a little bit ageist. Do they understand what you older trans folks went through, and that the path that you blazed for them so that they could have this easier experience as trans? I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying easier than you, which would be.
I'm so glad you said it that way because that is it's so uncanny that you just said those words because on TikTok, I started with TikTok to try to give advice to the younger generation. And I would say those words. I'd say, it's easier for you. And I would get lambasted. So I started to say, I'm not saying it's easy for you. I'm saying it's easier.
Right.
And I still would
Yeah.
get lambasted. I would still get trolled. I would still be like, well, now it's still really hard. You old people, you're just so disconnected. And I'm like, okay, I'm not out on the lawn yelling at a cloud to get out of the sky. I'm actually trying to communicate with you. So there's a lot that don't, but I think there's been a lot that have seen my movie and have contacted me, the documentary, and have been like, I didn't realize, you know, and I think it's important. I think I've been told the movie touches people all genders and whatever because it's a more of a story of overcoming and being persistent and love and just perseverance and when the trans youth see it, they're just like, I didn't know that you couldn't get that. I didn't know, you had to go through all that to jump through hoops. I had to take 1,000 question test after those 2 year period I talked about, before the doctor would say, okay, here is a letter saying you can get your surgery, your bottom surgery. But now you got to go out and find a doctor who will actually do it. That wasn't like you didn't just
Wow.
who who does vaginoplasties? No, you actually like. At one point, I was going to go all the way to Amsterdam. You know, so you
Wow.
have to like find it. But I had to take a thought. I had to go through the 2 years, the 6 months of presenting without hormones, then a year and a half on hormones, and 2 years of psychological visits, lots of money for hormones, money for, other surgeries I needed, all that stuff. And then to get that, it was 1,000 question test, and it was probably about 20 minutes of Rorschach, which I don't know what that proved, but that was part of it was the Harry Benjamin standards of care, they called it. And I had to go through all
Interesting.
that. And like, I'm just
They
like,
were they
okay,
were showing you the Rorschach pictures, and they were waiting for you to say, "That's a penis. That's a penis. That's it's all penises."
it's all
Who
penises. Get rid of them. Get rid of them. Ah!
That's I mean, when you talk about that Tuesday, it's kind of blowing my mind where it's like I can't think of almost anything that I find that defines me that I would be willing to go through that for. So when people say, you're not a woman, or that this is, you're just a freak or whatever it is, it's so obvious that this is so you from the inside out, that you were willing to go through this just so that you could realize who you are. I swear to God. I mean, if somebody said you have to go through that to keep doing stand-up comedy, I'd be like, on to the next great adventure in life, because I'm not going
Right.
through, you know,
I'm going to become a pedantic professor.
yeah. I don't even know if I'd go if they said to continue being a man, you have to go through all that.
Right.
I'd be like,
I know,
yeah, I'm
right?
old. It's fine. I'll just become an asexual, non-gender, whatever. But like, I can't think of anything I'd be willing to go through. And the fact that you, particularly at that time, and I don't know do you happen to know what the process is like to go through to get okayed for surgery nowadays?
I think it's pretty simple, actually. I think it's pretty like, the doctor kind of like you have to probably talk to a therapist, but not anywhere near like what I had to go through. Your doctor, evaluates you medically. You talk to the surgeons who will do it. I actually just had to have, because I always say, I'm definitely not the alpha. I didn't have the very first gender reassignment, but I'm one of the few betas afterwards. It was pretty early on. And so things, as you get older, you got to fix things. And one of the things that happened was my urethra constricted. And this was about a year or so ago. And I couldn't pee, and my bladder almost like blew up and killed me.
Whoa.
Yeah, they had to like actually poke holes in there and get catheters. And then I went to this doctor who was a urologist, and he ended up, because I think we've talked about this, insurance is just a piece of shit, and finally got the okay for the insurance to perform what's called a myeloplasty. I joke and I say I had to get a new urethra. I don't even know how they do it. I think they're going to put a straw up there, but I live in California, so it's probably a paper straw, so it's going to have to be redone. But yay, turtles! But he
Yeah.
went in and he did it, and this doctor didn't do it right. So I just recently had to go to a doctor, and I was sent to a doctor at USC CAC who does gender reassignment surgeries. And he looked at it. He said, okay, I can see what this doctor did. This is one of the early ones. It looks like a vagina, and you say that you orgasm, and so it evidently functions like a vagina. But I mean, we would do it differently, and that's why you're doing this. And he did this, and I can't even tell you because I don't retain clinical terms like that. But basically, he did A, B, C, D. Now we do D, C, A, F. But there's a lot of scar tissue that has built up over the years that's going to, because it's, even though that doctor supposedly performed this, it's constricting again. And so he had to go in and actually remove scar tissue on the inside, like laparoscopically, and do a couple things. And it's great now. Everything's working like it should be. But so, yeah,
That's
I don't
interesting.
know. I mean, because I'd had it done so long ago that I'm really not sure.
That's so interesting. I am curious about after the surgery. Did you feel that that now I'm me, and that was the fight? I mean, it must have been freeing, liberating, satisfying. What
It's
was it
kind
like
of
after you
like
finally took the final steps?
it's kind of, I don't want to downplay it because, yes, I worked hard to get it. I worked hard to get there. That's what I wanted to have. But there is also, it doesn't change who you are as a person necessarily. Like, you're still, if you're an alcoholic, you're going to be an alcoholic. It's not the be all
Hmm.
end all to save your life and change your life. If you're a secretary, you're still going to be a secretary. I mean, what was in my pants wasn't seen a lot by the general public, unless I chose it. So
Right.
it was for me. So it was almost like having, a really nasty boil that you bothered you forever and impeded your life removed. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes, I was really
Yeah.
happy it finally happened because I've been working towards this moment, but it still was just like, it's something that needs to be done. And I
Yeah.
think I got more excited like after like the fourth day I think it was, and the doctor was changing the dressing and he was pressing on a certain area, and all of a sudden I was like, oh. He goes, oh, your first orgasm is a woman. And I'm like, oh, thank God that works. Because I would have, you hear
Wow.
stories that you can't orgasm and the doctor doesn't do it right. And I was like, okay, well, that's a plus. That's gravy on the taters.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And then I imagine that because you said that you you didn't want sex, you were attracted to men, but you didn't want to have sex with men as a man, that
Yeah.
when that then finally, when you got to go try out take it on a test run, was that just life changing where you finally
It
were,
was the way it was supposed to be. It was the way
yeah.
it was supposed to be. I still, because of all the years of being affected by sex work, all the years of men only being attracted to me as a fetish, um,
Oh yeah.
my real father leaving and abandoning me when I was little, there's a lot of issues that I had when it came to like relationships. So my picker wasn't that good. So while the sex was good, finally,
Hmm.
still was picking the wrong man. you know, just
Interesting.
having a vagina didn't automatically make Prince Charming come. I had to,
Um,
work through other issues and know my worth.
that's interesting. Um, were the men that you were seeing, would you say that for the most part consider themselves heterosexual?
Yeah, oh yeah. If you're attracted to somebody that looks like a woman, I assume it's just heterosexual with a certain kink, if you will. Gay men aren't
Yeah.
attracted to
And that
feminine
is,
women things, so that just makes
yeah.
sense. And there's a lot of what we had called in the community chasers, guys who just, fetishized us. We're a chick with a dick, and they're fetish. It's a fetish, and then it's kind of like a guy with a foot fetish. That's all they think about is the foot. That's all they think about is the foot. I want to look at your foot. I want pictures of your feet. It's one of those things and it's hard. Trans women are fetishized, and to try to find. And I think it's better nowadays. There's a lot of trans women, younger trans women, that have fabulous relationships with the gender that they're attracted to, and they're married and they're having homes and they're having all these things that was not anywhere near available to me. And I think that's beautiful. I don't have any hate or any animosity that they get it and I don't. I think that's just weird energy to be like, because you know it's like being a parent. Don't you want your kids to be better off than you? That's kind of the generational thing with me. But I wasn't afforded that. Any guy who was like, you look like a real girl, still, for the most part, felt that he couldn't take me home to meet the parents because what if they found out? I was taken home to meet the parents on some occasions, but it wasn't long lasting because in the guy's head, someday they're going to find out, someday she's going to slip up. So,
Interesting.
mhm.
Do you still take hormones?
Yeah, you have to your whole life because I have no hormones in my body whatsoever if I don't take them.
Oh,
And then
wow.
then I'd get all kinds of like slow death because you just get tired. It's your cortisol levels, all kinds of things, your hormones affect. So it's not
Yeah. S-
necessarily like a feminization thing. It's just a staying alive. It's like a postmenopausal woman
Interesting.
thing.
Yeah, so it's not even just the surgery, it's a lifelong medical thing that you're
Mhm.
undergoing, that you have to stay on the hormones. Is there a long-term effect to being on hormones for many years?
I don't think there is anymore. I think with anything, it's individual. There are some trans women who've had to go off it because of cancer scares or other health issues, but
Oh yeah.
also cis women have issues with the hormones. Polycystic ovary, all kinds of things are regulated by hormones that go off whack. Guys, have low testosterone and all of a sudden they're getting cancer and they're exhausted all the time. Hormones are just what we need, but they play havoc with us.
Um, okay, I was just a little bit curious what your take on the fleetingly rare Republican slash conservative trans person, how like say Caitlyn Jenner, who just recently came out upset that because of Donald Trump they've changed her passport back to an M instead of an F, and was complaining about it, and while saying she loves Donald Trump because you have to
Yeah.
keep kissing the king's ass no matter what,
Yeah.
even when you're complaining about
She's a
him.
moron.
But just straight moron. That's it.
It's just Donald Trump basically pulled a Lady Gaga on her and said, I've changed baristas and won't call her back. You know, and she said, I love him.
So
Uh, you know, uh,
yeah,
she, these people aren't stupid. Number one, they're not highly intelligent, but they're not stupid. What they were doing is they're playing this whole, I mean, there were Jewish people that helped the Nazis because they thought they wouldn't get on the trains if they did it. They were out for themselves, and that's what Caitlyn was doing. I've got a bunch of money, and I want my money to be safe. I don't care if people get killed. She went on a whole rampage for a while about the price of her private jet hangar has gone up because of
yeah.
Biden and, all that crap. She knew what she was doing. She was out for herself. And she was like, I'm going to be saved because he's my friend. And it's stupid because we all know anybody, you and I are intelligent enough to know that leopards will eat the face eventually, the frog and the scorpion, blah, 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 blah. And
Oh my god.
they're paying for it. They're paying for it. And she's
Yeah.
paying for it now. And, you know, I don't have I have a lot of empathy for younger people who are getting their passport. I spent from the November 5th to January 20th, before when he was voted into his inauguration, I spent this time um, on my computer every day helping this org that was raising money, and they raised, I think it was over $150,000 to help trans people get their gender marker correct before the inauguration day because we knew what was going to happen. And other people are like, oh, it's not
Yeah.
going to happen. He's just blustering. He's just full of shit. And that's one of the first things he signed. And so we helped them. And my job was to every morning I would get up at like 5 in the morning, look at the laws of each state because they were changing constantly. So we had all across the country people asking us to help them. We had people who were, sitting on Zoom, typing in the information for them. If the person had the money, they would pay us to for their gender marker stuff to be sent in. They could pay their own passport and real ID. If they couldn't, we used our money for that. We weren't getting paid anything. We didn't take any money. It's all extremely transparent. Um, and so that's what we did. So we had workers doing that. And we actually had two of the people who were in the project forgot to do their own. And on January 19th, it's like, oh my
Oh
God, I
my.
got to send mine in. And they got it sent back wrongly. They got it sent back with the old ID. They got caught, and one of them is actually in the lawsuit that's going on from the ACLU. But we all saw it coming. We all knew what was
Yeah.
going to happen. And Caitlin just wants to sit there and goes, I'll be okay because I know him.
Yeah. It's interesting that you made the comparison to the Nazis, because if you look at the hatred that the Nazis and Hitler poured out through both propaganda and other ways towards the Jewish community in Germany at the time, it's kind of a one-for-one comparison to the outward, open, and abject hatred on the right towards trans people. I mean, this is their
textbook.
issue. Yeah. So you guys, I mean, if you look at history,
they burnt. It just went out of my head. The sex researcher, the library. They had all this stuff stored in.
yeah,
You know who I mean.
this was in Nazi Germany.
In Nazi Germany, that's one of the first things they did was they burnt down the library of the sex therapist that was actually treating transgendered people and stuff, and that had hordes and hordes of information on transgender people, and they arrested all the people and stuff. So, and then they went and they, made us carry cards, IDs that said we're trans, and so it is exactly, they're following that textbook one-on-one, erasing hordes and hordes of information from the internet about trans people is the burning of the books.
Yeah. Is that Mangus Hirschfeld?
Yeah, Magnus Hirschfeld, the Hirschfeld Institute.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, so they did that and they burnt that down, but that's been done over the course of several times for history. So these asshats who say trans is a new thing, well, to you, because they've destroyed our history. And they've done it time and time again. I've gotten in arguments with gay men, cis gay men, who say, well, the AIDS crisis didn't really affect the trans community. It was the gay men. I'm like, no, they just did not write T. They wrote M when they took the bodies of hundreds of my trans sisters and away in body bags from the hospitals. They did not record us as women or trans. They recorded us as men. Where's that history? So they erased the history.
That's an angle I wasn't even thinking about. That's an angle I wasn't even thinking about, because I was saying that you guys are sort of comparable what the Jewish community in Germany was like at that time, where it seems like they're gunning for you. It's all they talk about. I mean, you cannot talk to a dipshit fucking Trump supporter without them saying, you guys don't even know what the definition of a woman is. I mean, it's their number. It's their go-to.
And these are the idiots who'll fucking, buy a Ford F-110, big square old pickup truck full of metal and hard metal, and then call it Louise, and then put truck nuts on the back of it. I'm like, you just fucking did gender affirmation on your truck, idiot. What are you talking about? They don't know.
When they say
anything.
you don't know what the definition of a woman is, I always say, and you guys don't know what the definition of a minor is, so please. But
it's unreal that they are doing exactly what the Nazis did, exactly what they did. And I've been saying this for years, from his first term. If this guy gets in office, this is going to eventually what's going to happen. Oh, you're an alarmist. You're safe. You're in California. You're in the United States. You're safe. You're safe. And you know what? I'm relatively safe, but I'll tell you something. A year ago, I had a 40,000 reach on my Facebook page. I had a business page too, as you know, Freak Show. And I woke up in the middle of the night, as I have insomnia, and a lot of times I'll just go on, scroll Facebook, try to go back to sleep. And I was told, I got a message, And the message was from Facebook because it was in app. It was not, I'm not a boomer, I'm Jen Jones. So I know the difference between a phishing email. But it was in app, and it told me flat out that my Facebook page is being deleted. No appeal can be made. I have compromised not only the integrity of Facebook, but the integrity of the United States of America. And this is 2 weeks after Gabby and Cash removed LGBT. The terrorist list used to be, unless you were from a certain country, like if you were Palestinian, you're a terrorist. But it used to be every other group, for lack of a better term, had to have a secondary thing. So if you were LGBTQ, you had to be was also convicted of bombing something, or, fire or something. You had to have a secondary thing. They took that away. So just being LGBTQ now, you're a terrorist. And Trump has just said it recently that he's pouring another so many $1 billion into the FBI to combat gender terrorism, which means he's putting money in to come after us because we are the gender terrorists. But when I got that with the Facebook, and it was canceled, it was, no appeal. You compromise the integrity of Facebook in the United States of America. I'm like, first of all, I didn't know either one of them had fucking integrity. But what am I going to do? I had to start a new one and start from scratch, which ruined, a lot of promotion in this business, entertainment business and stuff. But I was told for years that, that'll never happen. You can't do that. And if that's happening to me, just taking away that, imagine these poor people that are in Kansas or that can't drive now and can't do this. And, I get really angry when people are like, oh, honey, calm down. You're safe. You're older. You're in California. You're in a safe space. I'm sorry. I don't just care about myself being safe. I am a firm believer until we're all free and safe, none of us are free and safe. I love that. And that goes to these people who tell me, oh, if you lived in Palestine, they'd throw you off a building. Well, I don't care. They don't deserve genocide. Okay? None of us are safe.
Yeah.
No one is safe unless none of us are safe, including the people who kind of disagree with me. It doesn't.
I mean, get ready with the midterms. It's going to be nonstop talk of bathrooms and trans people in sports. And that's an issue that I was going to ask you about, but I think we'll save that for our next interview because we're at the hour mark, and I'm so grateful
this went really quick.
I know.
Every time we've hung out in a green room, I have so enjoyed it, and I could talk to you for hours, and it seems like it's just minutes, Michael. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Tuesday, because I really, truly believe, as somebody who, despite being an atheist, I love all of God's children.
Yes,
and I
me
see
too.
that and you were a trailblazer, and the trans community is better off because people like Tuesday Thomas went through a struggle and helped identify or helped fight for the rights that they have. And the fight is not over, and it's not easy.
If one person, I've said all along, if one person has been moved or changed or wants to persevere and not give up their life because they've heard my story or part of it, then everything I went through was worth it. Everything.
That is such a beautiful way to look at it, Tuesday. Let's remind people where they can find you and where they can watch your both comedy special and your documentary.
Well, documentary's on Tubi. The Trash goes on Tuesday. On Prime and Comedy Dynamics is Tuesday's Trash. My Instagram is at Mama Warned Me. TikTok is Ask Tranma. And then I also, for the month of June, I will be at the Hudson Theater for a solo show for the Fringe Fest, and the show is called Confessions of a Groupie, or I Fucked Jim Morrison the night he died, but I didn't kill him, so stop asking me questions, copper. I play an 80-year-old groupie telling wild tales of her life. So
Oh my
come to
God,
the
I
fringe
love
and
it.
see me.
Yeah, I don't think I need to remind people because they've had such a good example of it this last hour, but Tuesday's fucking hilarious. So please check her out. Tuesday, thanks again.
Thanks, Michael.